The city was still asleep as the first rays of dawn broke through the darkness, casting a soft glow over the silent streets. In a small alley between two towering buildings, a young boy stirred from his sleep. Oliver, barely 12 years old, had long since grown accustomed to the cold, hard ground. His makeshift bed, a collection of old newspapers and tattered blankets, provided little comfort against the chill of the night. But Oliver was resilient, a quality that had kept him alive through the harshest of winters. He stretched his limbs and sat up, his eyes scanning the alley for any signs of movement. This alley, like many others, had become his refuge, a place where he could hide from the dangers that lurked in the streets of the city. Abandoned by his parents when he was just a toddler, Oliver had learned to survive on his own. He relied on his quick wits and the kindness of a few strangers who occasionally spared him a meal or some spare change. Despite his circumstances, there was a spark of hope in his heart, a belief that one day, something would change for the better. Every morning, as the city began to wake, Oliver would set out on his daily routine, searching for food and anything of value that he could sell. On this particular morning, however, Oliver felt a strange sense of anticipation. The air was crisp, and the city was unusually quiet, as if holding its breath in expectation. It was as if something was about to happen that would change his life forever, though he couldn't quite place why he felt this way. As he wandered through the maze of alleys and back streets, Oliver's sharp eyes caught a glimpse of something unusual, a flash of polished leather hidden in the shadows. He moved closer, his heart beating faster as a new thought crept into his mind. What if this is the moment I've been waiting for? Nestled between a dumpster and the wall of a grand old building was a black leather briefcase. It was out of place in this grimy alley, its polished surface gleaming in the dim light. Curiosity piqued, Oliver approached cautiously, his heart pounding with a mix of excitement and fear. He crouched down and carefully examined the briefcase, noting that it seemed untouched, as if someone had placed it there deliberately. Oliver's mind raced with possibilities. Was this left here by accident, or was it meant to be found? And by whom? After a moment of hesitation, Oliver reached out and grabbed the handle of the briefcase. It was surprisingly heavy, and his small hands struggled to open the clasps. When he finally managed to pry it open, his breath caught in his throat. Inside were neatly stacked documents, all bearing official seals and signatures. Oliver didn't understand much about legal papers, but he knew enough to recognize that these were important. As he flipped through them, one name stood out, Henry Turner, a name he had heard whispered with a mixture of fear and respect in the streets. But as he stared at the documents, another thought struck him: why would someone leave something so valuable here? Oliver sat back on his heels, the briefcase still clutched in his hands, as his mind raced. Henry Turner was one of the most powerful men in the city, a businessman with a reputation for ruthlessness. The documents in the briefcase were property deeds, pages of legal jargon that detailed ownership of some of the most valuable real estate in the city. Oliver could barely believe what he was holding. The thought of what these papers could be worth, both monetarily and in terms of influence, made his head spin. Yet, as he stared at the documents, a heavy feeling settled in his chest. He knew enough about the world to understand that such things didn't come without risk. Keeping the papers could bring him more trouble than he could handle. But returning them, that was a different story. What would happen if he brought these back to their rightful owner? Would he be rewarded? Or would he be punished for having them in the first place? And why did he feel like there was something more to these documents than met the eye? The questions swirled in his mind, but one thing became clear: he couldn't keep them. His decision made, Oliver closed the briefcase and stood up. The early morning light was growing stronger, and the city was beginning to stir. He knew where Henry Turner lived, a grand mansion on the outskirts of the city, a place Oliver had only seen from a distance. But there was another thought that gnawed at him as he began his journey. What if this is more than just a simple return? What if there's something hidden within these documents that I don't yet understand? With a deep breath, he started walking, clutching the briefcase tightly to his chest, unaware of how his life was about to change. The journey to Henry Turner's mansion was longer than Oliver expected. The cityscape gradually shifted from crowded streets and towering buildings to quiet, tree-lined avenues with sprawling estates. Oliver had never been this far from his usual haunts, and the sheer size of the houses he passed left him in awe. It was like stepping into another world, one of wealth and privilege that was completely foreign to him. But as much as he was tempted to turn back, something inside him urged him forward. This is the right thing to do, he told himself, though a small voice in the back of his mind whispered, but what if you're walking into something dangerous? When he finally reached the gates of Turner's mansion, Oliver hesitated. The mansion was enormous, surrounded by high walls and guarded by imposing iron gates. For a moment, he felt a surge of panic. What was he doing here? How could he, a boy from the streets, possibly approach someone like Henry Turner? But then he remembered the briefcase in his hands, the responsibility he now carried. Summoning every ounce of courage, he approached the intercom by the gate and pressed the button, his heart pounding as he wondered, will this man see me as a threat, or as a child in need? There was a crackle of static before a voice responded. Who is it? Oliver's mouth went dry, and for a moment, he couldn't find his voice. Then, with a shaky breath, he answered, I need to speak with Mr. Turner. It's important. There was a long pause, and Oliver could hear muffled voices on the other end. Finally, the gate began to slowly swing open. Come in, the voice said, not unkindly. With his heart pounding in his chest, Oliver stepped through the gates and into the unknown, a nagging feeling that he was about to uncover something far more significant than he had anticipated. As Oliver walked up the long driveway, the grandeur of the mansion loomed larger with each step. The front door, a massive wooden structure with intricate carvings, opened before he could even knock. A butler stood there, his expression unreadable as he looked the boy up and down. Mr. Turner is expecting you, he said, stepping aside to allow Oliver to enter. The interior of the mansion was even more intimidating than the outside, with high ceilings, marble floors, and priceless artworks adorning the walls. Was this really the home of a man who would welcome a street child like him? Oliver couldn't help but wonder. Oliver was led through a series of hallways until they reached a large study. The butler knocked once, then opened the door, motioning for Oliver to enter. Inside, behind a massive oak desk, sat Henry Turner. He was older than Oliver had imagined, with graying hair and a stern expression. His sharp eyes scrutinized the boy as Oliver hesitantly stepped forward, clutching the briefcase so tightly that his knuckles turned white. Would Turner believe his story, or would he assume the worst? The uncertainty gnawed at Oliver as he spoke. You wanted to see me, Turner said, his voice calm but with an edge of curiosity. Oliver swallowed hard, forcing himself to meet the man's gaze. I found this, he stammered, holding out the briefcase. It has your name on it. I thought you might want it back. Turner's eyes narrowed as he took the briefcase, opening it and quickly scanning the contents. For a moment, his expression softened, but it was so brief that Oliver wondered if he had imagined it. You brought this all the way here, Turner said, more a statement than a question. Oliver nodded, too nervous to speak, and wondered, was there something in those documents that Turner didn't want him to see? Henry Turner closed the briefcase and set it aside, leaning back in his chair as he studied the boy standing before him. There was a long silence as Turner seemed to weigh his next words carefully. "You could have sold these," he said finally, his tone neutral. "You could have made quite a bit of money, especially on the streets. But you didn't. Why?" Oliver shifted uncomfortably, unsure how to answer. Why hadn't he taken the money and run? It was a question that had lingered in his mind since the moment he found the briefcase. I didn't think it would be right," he said quietly. "They're not mine. I thought maybe you'd want them back." Turner's expression remained unreadable, but there was a hint of something in his eyes, respect, perhaps, or maybe curiosity. "And what do you expect in return?" he asked, his voice soft but with an edge that made Oliver's stomach twist. The question caught Oliver off guard. He hadn't really thought about what he wanted, if anything. After a moment, he shook his head. "Nothing," he whispered. "I don't want anything. I just wanted to do the right thing." But what if doing the right thing had put him in danger? For the first time since the conversation began, Turner's stern expression cracked, revealing a look of genuine surprise. He leaned forward slightly, his gaze never leaving Oliver's face. "You don't want anything," he repeated, almost to himself. After another pause, he made a decision. "Very well," Turner said, standing up. "Come with me. Let's get you something to eat and a place to rest for the night." Oliver blinked in disbelief. Was this really happening? Unsure of what else to do, he nodded and followed Turner out of the study, his heart pounding with a mixture of fear and hope, and a growing suspicion that there was more to this man, and these documents, than he had been told. The dining room was even more luxurious than Oliver had imagined. A long table, covered with a pristine white cloth, was set with fine china and silverware that gleamed under the chandelier's soft light. The aroma of freshly cooked food filled the air, making Oliver's stomach rumble loudly in anticipation. He hadn't eaten a proper meal in days, and the sight of the feast before him was almost overwhelming. Turner gestured for him to sit, and as Oliver took his seat, a servant promptly filled his plate with more food than he had ever seen in one place. Could a man who lived in such luxury ever understand the life Oliver had led? At first, Oliver hesitated, unsure if this was some sort of test. But Turner simply nodded encouragingly, and the boy began to eat, slowly at first, and then with increasing hunger. The food was like nothing he had ever tasted, rich, flavorful, and cooked to perfection. As he ate, he couldn't help but glance around the room, taking in the opulence of his surroundings. Everything about this place was so far removed from the world he knew, it almost felt like a dream. But was this kindness genuine, or was there something else at play? After the meal, Turner led Oliver to a guest bedroom. The room was spacious, with a large bed covered in soft, thick blankets. A fire crackled in the hearth, casting a warm glow that made the room feel cozy and inviting. "You can sleep here tonight," Turner said, his tone still reserved but not unkind. "Rest well. We'll talk more in the morning." Oliver nodded, barely able to speak as he looked around the room in awe. When Turner left, closing the door softly behind him, Oliver sat on the edge of the bed, running his hands over the blankets. Was this the beginning of a new life, or was he simply being lulled into a false sense of security? Oliver woke the next morning, feeling more rested than he had in years. For a few blissful moments, he forgot where he was, the softness of the bed and the warmth of the room lulling him into a sense of peace. But as reality set in, he remembered the events of the previous day. He sat up, heart pounding with a mixture of anticipation and fear. What would happen now? Would Turner keep him here, or would he be sent back to the streets? The uncertainty gnawed at him as he dressed in the clean clothes that had been left out for him. A knock on the door startled him, and the butler from the day before entered, his expression as impassive as ever. "Mr. Turner is waiting for you in the study," he said. Oliver nodded, his stomach churning with nerves as he followed the butler through the mansion's labyrinthine halls. When they reached the study, the butler opened the door and motioned for Oliver to enter. Turner was sitting behind his desk, just as he had been the day before, but there was a slight softness in his demeanor that put Oliver at ease. But was this just a facade? "Come in, Oliver," Turner said, his voice calm. "Have a seat." Oliver did as he was told, perching on the edge of the chair as Turner regarded him thoughtfully. "I've been thinking about what you did yesterday," Turner began. "You showed remarkable honesty, something that is rare these days. But I need to know, why? Why didn't you keep the briefcase? Why did you bring it back to me?" Oliver swallowed hard, his mouth suddenly dry. "I guess I just wanted to do the right thing," he said slowly. "I don't have much, but I still know what's right and wrong." But could Turner see through him? Did he suspect Oliver had his own secrets? Turner leaned back in his chair, his gaze never leaving Oliver's face. The boy's words had touched something deep within him, stirring memories and emotions he had long buried. Turner had spent years building his empire, focusing solely on wealth and power. The sacrifices he had made along the way, relationships, family, even his own happiness, were things he rarely thought about anymore. But something about this boy, with his quiet dignity and unwavering honesty, made Turner question everything he had once valued. But could Oliver be trusted, or was there something he wasn't revealing? For the first time in a long while, Turner found himself at a crossroads. He could send Oliver back to the streets with a token reward, maybe a bit of money or a meal, and continue with his life as if nothing had changed. Or, he could take a different path, one that involved a level of responsibility he wasn't sure he was ready to accept. The idea of letting Oliver into his life, even in a small way, was daunting. But there was something in the boy's eyes, something that reminded Turner of himself at that age, that made it impossible for him to turn away. After what felt like an eternity, Turner spoke. "Oliver," he said, his voice softer than before. "I'm not a man who makes decisions lightly, but I see something in you that I haven't seen in a long time. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm willing to take a chance. If you'd like, you can stay here with me. At least for a while." Oliver's heart skipped a beat. The offer was more than he had dared to hope for, and yet, the fear of rejection still lingered. He nodded slowly, not trusting himself to speak, as a small spark of hope ignited within him. But was Turner's offer genuine, or was there an ulterior motive? Days turned into weeks as Oliver settled into his new life at Turner's mansion. The transition was not without its challenges. The mansion was a world apart from the streets, and Oliver often felt out of place amidst the wealth and luxury that surrounded him. Yet, each day brought new experiences, new opportunities to learn and grow. Turner, true to his word, provided Oliver with everything he needed: clothing, food, and most importantly, a sense of stability that the boy had never known before. But why had Turner really offered this to him? One evening, as they sat in the library after dinner, Turner broached a subject that had been weighing on his mind. "Oliver," he began, closing the book he had been reading. "I've been thinking a lot about the future, your future, to be exact." Oliver looked up, a flicker of anxiety in his eyes. Turner's serious tone made him uneasy, and he couldn't help but wonder if he was about to be sent away. But Turner's next words caught him off guard. "I want you to stay here, with me, permanently," Turner said, his voice steady. "I'm offering you a place in my home, and if you're willing, in my life." But was this proposal as simple as it seemed? Oliver stared at him, speechless. The magnitude of the offer was overwhelming. He had come from nothing, had known nothing but the streets, and now, this man, a man of immense wealth and power, was offering him a home, a family. It was more than he had ever dreamed possible. Tears welled up in his eyes, and he quickly wiped them away, not wanting to appear weak. Are you sure?" Oliver asked, his voice trembling. Turner nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of his lips. "I've never been more sure of anything," he replied. But was Turner's certainty rooted in something Oliver didn't yet know? Life at the mansion was a constant learning experience for Oliver. Every day, he was faced with challenges that he had never encountered before: formal dinners, interactions with the household staff, and the complex social dynamics of high society. But the biggest challenge was school. Turner had enrolled him in an exclusive private academy, a place where the children of the city's elite were educated. It was a world apart from anything Oliver had known, and he struggled to fit in. Yet, beneath the surface of this new life, Oliver couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. At first, the other students were wary of him. Oliver's background was a mystery to them, and his rough edges stood out in a place where refinement was the norm. But slowly, with Turner's encouragement and support, Oliver began to find his footing. He discovered a love for learning, something that had been denied to him for so long. His teachers were impressed by his quick mind and eagerness to absorb new information, and gradually, he started to earn the respect of his peers. Yet, even as he adjusted to his new life, Oliver couldn't shake the feeling that he didn't quite belong. The memory of the streets was never far from his mind, and there were moments when he wondered if this new life was really meant for him. But Turner's presence, his steady guidance and unwavering belief in Oliver, kept him grounded. Turner had become more than just a benefactor. He was a mentor, a father figure, and as the days passed, Oliver found himself growing more comfortable in this new role. But what secrets still lingered in the shadows of the mansion, and why did Turner seem to avoid certain topics whenever Oliver asked? As Oliver settled into his new life, he couldn't help but notice the undercurrents of tension that occasionally surfaced within the mansion. The staff, though always polite and professional, sometimes exchanged knowing glances when they thought Oliver wasn't looking. There were whispered conversations that ended abruptly when he entered the room, and certain areas of the mansion seemed to be off-limits, locked away and shrouded in mystery. What was Turner hiding, and why did it feel like the answers were just out of reach? One day, while exploring the mansion, Oliver stumbled upon a small, locked room at the end of a long corridor. The door was old and heavy, its paint chipped and faded, unlike the rest of the mansion's immaculate decor. Curiosity got the better of him, and he pressed his ear to the door, straining to hear any sound from within. But the room was silent, and after a few moments, Oliver reluctantly turned away, his mind filled with questions. What was behind that door? And why did it feel like the key to understanding Turner lay hidden within? That evening, as they sat by the fireplace, Oliver couldn't resist bringing up the subject. "Mr. Turner," he began cautiously, I've noticed some things around the mansion. Locked doors, rooms that no one seems to go into. Is there something you're not telling me?" Turner's expression tightened for a moment, but he quickly composed himself. "There are some things in this house that are better left in the past, Oliver," he said, his voice soft but firm. Memories that I'd rather not revisit. But you have nothing to fear. This is your home now, and I promise you, you're safe here. But Oliver couldn't shake the feeling that Turner was hiding something important, something that could change everything. Despite the lingering questions, Oliver and Turner's relationship continued to grow. The more time they spent together, the more Oliver began to see Turner not just as a powerful businessman, but as a man with his own struggles and sorrows. Turner, in turn, opened up to Oliver in ways he hadn't with anyone else in years. He shared stories of his past, of his early days in business, the ruthless decisions he'd made, and the people he had lost along the way. There was a particular sadness in his voice when he spoke of his family, a wife and son who had once filled the mansion with life and laughter. But why had Turner chosen Oliver, of all people, to confide in? As the weeks passed, Oliver and Turner developed a routine. They would have breakfast together each morning, discussing Oliver's experiences at school and Turner's business affairs. In the evenings, they would sit by the fire, with Turner sharing more about his life and occasionally asking about Oliver's time on the streets. It was during these quiet moments that Oliver began to feel a deep connection with Turner, a bond that went beyond mere gratitude. It was something more, something that felt like family. But was this bond built on a lie, or was there a deeper truth waiting to be uncovered? Turner, too, felt the bond deepening. Oliver's presence had brought a sense of purpose back into his life, a reason to look forward to each day. The boy's resilience, his determination to make the most of the opportunities given to him, reminded Turner of his own younger self, before life's trials had hardened him. Slowly but surely, Turner began to see Oliver not just as a guest, but as someone he could care for, someone who might fill the void that had been left by the loss of his own son. But could Oliver ever truly replace what Turner had lost, or was he simply a stand-in for someone else? Just as Oliver and Turner were beginning to settle into their new life together, the past reared its head in the form of an unexpected visitor. One afternoon, while Oliver was at school, a man arrived at the mansion, demanding to see Turner. The staff, recognizing the man as an old associate of Turner's, allowed him inside. When Turner came face to face with the visitor, his expression darkened. It was clear that this was not a friendly call. But what connection did this man have to Turner's past, and why did his presence unsettle Turner so deeply? The man, Victor Reynolds, had once been Turner's partner in business, back in the days when they had both been hungry for power and wealth. Together, they had built an empire, but their partnership had ended bitterly, with accusations and betrayals on both sides. Now, years later, Victor had returned, and the look in his eyes made it clear that he hadn't come to make amends. He had come to settle old scores. Victor's visit was short but left Turner deeply unsettled. He didn't share the details with Oliver, but the tension was palpable. That evening, Turner was quieter than usual, his thoughts clearly elsewhere. Oliver noticed the change and couldn't help but feel a growing sense of unease. What had Victor said to Turner, and why was Turner suddenly so distant? The mansion, once a sanctuary, now seemed to hold dark secrets that threatened to disrupt the peace they had found. Days after Victor's visit, Oliver found himself alone in the mansion when a knock on the door startled him. It was Victor, and the look on his face made Oliver's stomach turn. "I need to talk to you," Victor said, his tone insistent. "There are things you need to know about Turner, things he hasn't told you." Oliver hesitated, but something about Victor's demeanor made him listen. Victor spoke of Turner's past, painting a picture of a man driven by greed, a man who had ruined lives in his quest for power. Victor's words were laced with venom, and Oliver couldn't help but feel torn. On one hand, Turner had been nothing but kind to him, giving him a chance at a better life. On the other, The story Victor told was one of betrayal, of a man who had sacrificed everything, including his own humanity, for success. "You're just a pawn to him," Victor said, his voice low and dangerous. "He's using you to atone for his sins. But don't be fooled, he's still the same ruthless man he always was." Could Victor be right? Was Oliver just a replacement for someone Turner had lost, or was there something more sinister at play? Oliver was shaken. The man Victor described didn't match the Turner he had come to know. Yet, the seed of doubt had been planted. What if everything Turner had shown him was just a facade? That night, as he lay in bed, Oliver's mind raced with conflicting thoughts. His loyalty to Turner warred with the fear that he had been deceived. He knew he had to confront Turner, but the thought of doing so filled him with dread. The next morning, Oliver gathered the courage to confront Turner. He found him in the study, poring over documents with a troubled expression. "Mr. Turner," Oliver began, his voice trembling, "there's something I need to ask you." Turner looked up, surprised by the serious tone in Oliver's voice. "What is it, Oliver?" he asked, setting aside his papers. Oliver hesitated, then took a deep breath. I spoke to Victor," he said quietly. "He told me things about your past, things that don't match what I've seen here." For a moment, Turner's face hardened, but then he sighed deeply, running a hand through his graying hair. "I see," he said, his voice heavy with resignation. "I suppose it was only a matter of time before the past caught up with me." He motioned for Oliver to sit, and when the boy did, Turner began to speak. He told Oliver about the man he used to be, a man consumed by ambition, willing to do whatever it took to rise to the top. He spoke of the deals he had made, the people he had hurt, and the relationships he had sacrificed. But was this confession the whole truth, or was there something Turner was still hiding? As Turner spoke, Oliver listened in stunned silence. The man before him seemed so different from the one described in Victor's story, yet there were undeniable truths in Turner's confession. When Turner finished, he looked at Oliver with a sorrowful expression. "I'm not proud of who I was, Oliver," he said quietly. "I've made mistakes, more than I can count. But I'm trying to be better. I can't change the past, but I can try to make amends in whatever way I can." But was Turner's desire for redemption enough to outweigh the sins of his past? Oliver sat in silence for a long moment, absorbing Turner's words. The truth weighed heavily on his shoulders, and he felt a mixture of emotions: anger, sadness, confusion. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" Oliver finally asked, his voice strained. Turner looked down, a deep sadness in his eyes. "Because I was ashamed," he admitted. "I didn't want you to see me as the man I used to be. I wanted to protect you from the darkness in my past." Oliver shook his head, struggling to make sense of everything. "But you've changed," he said, more to himself than to Turner. "You're not that person anymore." Turner nodded, his expression earnest. "I'm trying, Oliver. Every day, I'm trying to be a better man. And you've helped me more than you know." The sincerity in Turner's voice was unmistakable, and slowly, Oliver began to feel the tension ease from his chest. But was this change real, or was it another layer of deception? But there was still so much to process. "I don't know what to think," Oliver said finally, his voice trembling. "I want to trust you, but I'm scared. I don't want to be hurt again." Turner's expression softened, and he reached out, placing a hand on Oliver's shoulder. "I understand," he said gently. "And I don't expect you to trust me right away. All I ask is that you give me a chance to prove myself, to show you that I'm committed to doing right by you and by others." But could Turner truly earn back the trust he had lost? In the days that followed, Oliver wrestled with his emotions. He replayed his conversation with Turner over and over in his mind, trying to reconcile the man he knew with the man Turner had once been. It wasn't an easy task. The streets had taught Oliver to be wary of trust, to always be on guard against those who might take advantage of him. But at the same time, he couldn't deny the kindness Turner had shown him, the care he had taken to make Oliver feel at home. One evening, as the sun set over the mansion's expansive grounds, Oliver made his decision. He found Turner in the library, sitting by the fire with a book in his hands. "Mr. Turner," Oliver began, his voice steady, "I've made up my mind." Turner looked up, his expression unreadable. "I'm not going to leave," Oliver continued. "But if I stay, it has to be on my terms. I want to help you, help us, make things right. I want to use what you've given me to make a difference, to help others who are where I was." But was Oliver truly ready to face the challenges that lay ahead? Turner's eyes softened, and for the first time in what felt like days, he smiled. "I think that's a wonderful idea, Oliver," he said warmly. "And I promise you, we'll do this together. Whatever it takes, we'll make a difference." Oliver nodded, feeling a sense of peace settle over him. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time, he felt like he had a purpose, a reason to move forward. Together, he and Turner would face the shadows of the past and work towards a better future. But could they truly overcome the obstacles that lay in their path, or would the past come back to haunt them once more? With a renewed sense of purpose, Oliver and Turner began to work together on a plan. They decided to transform the mansion into a sanctuary for homeless children, a place where those who had nowhere else to go could find shelter, education, and a chance at a better life. It was a massive undertaking, but Turner's resources and Oliver's first-hand knowledge of life on the streets gave them a unique perspective and a drive to make the sanctuary a reality. But could they really succeed, or would the weight of Turner's past sabotage their efforts? The transformation of the mansion began almost immediately. Rooms that had been empty and unused for years were repurposed into dormitories, classrooms, and recreation areas. Turner brought in experts to help with the logistics, and Oliver worked alongside them, ensuring that the sanctuary would be a place of warmth and safety, not just another institution. It was hard work, but it was fulfilling in a way that neither of them had ever experienced before. But as the sanctuary took shape, Oliver couldn't shake the feeling that something, or someone, was working against them. As the sanctuary began to take shape, children from all over the city started arriving. Some were like Oliver, kids who had been living on the streets, forgotten by society. Others had come from broken homes, seeking refuge from abusive situations. Each child had their own story, their own scars, but within the walls of the sanctuary, they found something they had been missing: hope. And in turn, Oliver and Turner found a sense of fulfillment that went beyond anything they had ever known. But was this peace too good to last, or was it the calm before the storm? But just as they were beginning to feel secure in their new life, a crisis struck. One of the children at the sanctuary, a young girl named Emma, fell seriously ill. The doctors who were called in diagnosed her with a rare disease that required immediate and expensive treatment. The news hit Turner and Oliver hard. They had worked so hard to create a safe haven, but now, they were faced with a challenge that money alone couldn't solve. But was this illness just bad luck, or was there something more sinister at play? Turner, who had always been a man of action, was devastated by the helplessness he felt. He had built his fortune on the belief that anything could be fixed with the right amount of money or influence, but Emma's illness was a stark reminder that some things were beyond his control. Oliver, too, was shaken. He had grown close to Emma, seeing in her the same determination and strength that had kept him going during his darkest days. The thought of losing her was unbearable. But was Emma's illness a test of their resolve, or a warning of things to come? In the days that followed, Turner and Oliver did everything they could to find the best doctors, the best treatments, but the situation only grew more dire. The other children in the sanctuary sensed the tension and fear, and the once lively atmosphere grew somber. It was a test of their resolve, of their commitment to the children they had taken in. And in those difficult days, Oliver and Turner found themselves leaning on each other more than ever, determined to face the challenge together. But could they truly overcome this, or would it tear apart everything they had built? As Emma's condition worsened, Turner found himself confronting the painful truth of his past once more. The guilt that had haunted him for years resurfaced, and he began to wonder if this was some form of cosmic retribution for the mistakes he had made. The weight of his past decisions, the lives he had damaged in his relentless pursuit of success, pressed down on him like never before. He couldn't help but think that he was being punished, and that Emma's suffering was a direct result of his actions. But was this truly karma, or was there a more direct link between his past and Emma's illness? Oliver noticed the change in Turner. The man who had once been so strong, so confident, now seemed vulnerable, almost broken. It was a side of Turner that Oliver had never seen before, and it frightened him. But instead of retreating, Oliver did the only thing he could. He stayed by Turner's side, offering comfort and support. He reminded Turner that they had created the sanctuary to make a difference, to atone for the past by helping those who needed it most. But could they really atone, or was it too late to escape the consequences of Turner's past? One evening, as they sat by Emma's bedside, Turner broke down. "I can't lose her, Oliver," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "I've lost too much already. If she dies, I don't know if I can bear it." Oliver reached out, taking Turner's hand in his own. "We're in this together," he said softly. "Whatever happens, we'll face it together. You're not alone, Mr. Turner. You've got all of us. And Emma. Emma has all of us too." Turner looked at Oliver, his eyes filled with gratitude and sorrow. But would their united front be enough to save Emma, or was there something they were missing? Just when things seemed darkest, a breakthrough came. One of the doctors they had consulted, a specialist from out of town, believed there was a new treatment that could help Emma. It was experimental and risky, but it was their best shot. With renewed hope, Turner and Oliver agreed to the treatment, and the process began. It was a tense and difficult time, with many sleepless nights and moments of doubt. But through it all, the sanctuary community rallied around Emma, offering their prayers and support. But was this treatment truly the answer, or was it another gamble in a losing game? The treatment was grueling, and there were moments when it seemed that Emma might not make it. But slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, she began to show signs of improvement. Her strength returned, her color improved, and the doctors cautiously declared that the treatment appeared to be working. The relief that swept through the sanctuary was palpable. For the first time in weeks, there were smiles and laughter again, and the dark cloud that had hung over them began to lift. But was this truly the end of their troubles, or just a temporary reprieve? Turner, who had been a shell of himself during Emma's illness, seemed to come back to life. He threw himself into the work of the sanctuary with renewed vigor, determined to ensure that no child would ever have to suffer the way Emma had. And Oliver, who had never wavered in his belief that they would find a way through the crisis, found himself emerging from the ordeal stronger and more confident in his role as a leader. The experience had tested them all, but it had also brought them closer together, reinforcing the bond they had worked so hard to build. But had they truly escaped the shadows of the past, or were they still lurking just out of sight? With Emma on the road to recovery, Turner and Oliver turned their attention to the future. The ordeal had shown them both the importance of what they were doing, and they were more determined than ever to expand the sanctuary's reach. Turner made the decision to donate a significant portion of his wealth to the sanctuary, ensuring its sustainability for years to come. It was a public gesture of atonement, a way for Turner to make amends for the mistakes of his past. But was this act of charity enough to truly erase the sins of his past, or was there something more he needed to confront? The announcement of Turner's donation made headlines, and the sanctuary quickly became a symbol of hope for the entire city. People who had once been skeptical of Turner's transformation now saw him in a new light, as a man who was genuinely committed to doing good. The sanctuary began receiving support from all corners, with volunteers, donations, and resources pouring in. It was as if the city itself had embraced the idea of redemption and was eager to be a part of it. But was this new attention a blessing, or would it bring new challenges to their door? For Oliver, the transformation of the sanctuary was a validation of everything he had fought for. He had gone from being a boy with nothing to a leader who was helping to change lives. And through it all, Turner had been by his side, not as a distant benefactor, but as a partner, a mentor, and a father. Together, they had turned the mansion into a place of healing and hope, and the future looked brighter than ever. But was this bright future truly secure, or were there still shadows waiting to be uncovered? As the sanctuary continued to thrive, Oliver and Turner found themselves in a new phase of their lives. The past, with all its pain and regret, had finally been laid to rest, and they were free to focus on the future. The sanctuary was no longer just a refuge for children, it had become a hub of community and learning, a place where young people could discover their potential and build a better life. Turner's decision to donate his wealth had been the catalyst for this transformation, but it was Oliver's vision that had brought it to life. But was this new beginning truly the end of their troubles, or was there something still unresolved? Oliver, now in his late teens, had grown into a confident and capable young man. He had completed his education and was fully immersed in the work of the sanctuary. His experience on the streets had given him a unique perspective, one that made him an invaluable leader in the sanctuary's day-to-day operations. He understood the children who came to them, because he had once been in their shoes. And because of that, the children trusted him, looked up to him as a role model. Turner, for his part, had found a new sense of peace. The guilt that had once haunted him was still there, but it was no longer overwhelming. He had made mistakes, but he had also made amends. And in Oliver, he had found not just a son, but a legacy, someone who would carry on the work they had started together. As they stood together on the steps of the mansion, watching the children play in the garden, Turner turned to Oliver and said, "We've come a long way, haven't we?" Oliver smiled, feeling a deep sense of contentment. "Yes, we have," he replied. "And there's still so much more to do." But was there something Turner still hadn't told Oliver, something that could change everything? Years passed, and the sanctuary's reputation continued to grow. It had become a model for similar programs across the country, with people coming from all over to learn from their success. Oliver, now an adult, had taken on a more prominent role in the organization, leading efforts to expand their work beyond the city. He traveled frequently, speaking at conferences, meeting with other leaders, and advocating for the rights of homeless and disadvantaged children. But as Oliver's influence grew, so did the scrutiny of those who still held grudges against Turner. The sanctuary itself had expanded, with new buildings, more staff, and a wider range of programs. They offered everything from basic education and healthcare to vocational training and counseling. The children who passed through their doors left with the skills and confidence they needed to build a better future. And for those who had nowhere else to go, the sanctuary remained a permanent home, a place where they could always return. Turner, now well into his 60s, had taken a step back from the day-to-day operations, but he remained a guiding presence. He was proud of the work they had done, and even prouder of the man Oliver had become. As he watched Oliver lead the organization they had built together, Turner knew that the sanctuary would continue long after he was gone. It was a legacy he could be proud of, one that would outlast any of the wealth or power he had once sought. But was there something in Turner's past that could still threaten the sanctuary's future? As the years went by, Turner's health began to decline. It was a slow process, but inevitable. He spent more time at home, often sitting in the garden where he could watch the children play. Oliver visited him often, making sure he was comfortable and sharing news of the sanctuary's progress. But Turner knew his time was running out, and he began to prepare for the end. He put his affairs in order, ensuring that the sanctuary would have everything it needed to continue without him. But was there one last secret Turner needed to share before it was too late? One evening, as the sun was setting, Turner asked Oliver to sit with him in the garden. "I've been thinking a lot about my life," Turner said quietly, his voice tinged with both weariness and peace. "About the mistakes I've made, the people I've hurt, and the things I've done right. I'm not proud of everything, but I am proud of what we've done here. Proud of you." Oliver, his throat tight with emotion, nodded. "I'm proud of you too," he said softly. "You gave me a chance when no one else would. You changed my life." Turner smiled, a faint, contented smile. "I didn't just change your life, Oliver. You changed mine too. You gave me a reason to be better, to do better. And for that, I'll always be grateful." They sat in silence for a while, the warmth of the setting sun casting a golden glow over the garden. Turner's breathing grew slower, and as the last rays of sunlight faded, he closed his eyes for the final time. Oliver sat beside him, holding his hand, feeling a deep sense of loss mixed with profound gratitude. Turner had given him everything: a home, a family, and a purpose. And now, it was up to Oliver to carry on his legacy. But as Turner took his last breath, Oliver couldn't shake the feeling that there was something Turner had never told him, something important. In the months following Turner's passing, Oliver threw himself into the work of the sanctuary with renewed dedication. He knew that the best way to honor Turner's memory was to continue the work they had started together, to ensure that the sanctuary would continue to grow and thrive. The board of directors, recognizing Oliver's vision and leadership, appointed him as the official head of the organization. It was a role that came with immense responsibility, but Oliver was ready. But as he took on this new role, Oliver couldn't shake the feeling that he was missing a piece of the puzzle. Under Oliver's leadership, the sanctuary expanded its reach, opening new centers in other cities and developing new programs to meet the needs of even more children. He continued to advocate for the rights of homeless and disadvantaged youth, using his platform to raise awareness and push for systemic change. The sanctuary became not just a place of refuge, but a movement, a beacon of hope for those who had been forgotten by society. But with this new visibility came new challenges, and Oliver knew he needed to be prepared for whatever came next. As the years went by, Oliver's work touched the lives of thousands of children, giving them the chance to escape the cycle of poverty and build a better future. And through it all, he carried with him the lessons he had learned from Turner, the importance of honesty, integrity, and the belief that it's never too late to make things right. One day, as he stood on the steps of the mansion, looking out at the bustling activity of the sanctuary, Oliver felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He had carried the torch that Turner had passed to him, and in doing so, had created something that would endure long after he was gone. But as he stood there, a letter arrived, addressed to Oliver in Turner's handwriting, with the words "For your eyes only." What could it possibly contain, and how would it change everything he thought he knew? The mansion, once a symbol of wealth and power, was now a place of healing and hope, a legacy that Turner and Oliver had built together. And as long as the sanctuary stood, the memory of their work, their bond, and their shared journey would live on, inspiring future generations to continue the fight for a better, more compassionate world. But with the letter in his hands, Oliver knew that his journey was far from over, and that Turner's final words would reveal the last secret that had been hidden all along.